This is the May 22nd, 2019 Sustainability Board meeting.
All right, I'd like to call to order the May 22nd, 2019 Satellite Beach Sustainability Board meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. At this moment, I would like to acknowledge and welcome Jennifer Schroeder. Jennifer Schroeder grew up in Michigan. She went to the University of Michigan. She has a PhD in clinical psychology from Bowling Green State University. She worked at Yale Consultation Center, right?
Yeah.
She has chaired an international implementation conference for 10 years.
Yeah.
Yep. And she is a small business owner. She has also served on various boards through the years. And she is a sci-fi lover. Welcome. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah.
And also at this moment, I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity and the privilege of serving as chair of this board. I wouldn't have accepted this opportunity if I wasn't surrounded by friends, and I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. So first order of business today, we'll have public comment. If you could please come to the podium. You have 3 minutes to say whatever you like. If you would please state your name, your address, and yeah, make sure you speak at the podium. Thank you very much. First person, if you would. All right.
Here's our prompt. Chris and I were working on up until 15 minutes ago. So, my name is Scott Grimm. I live at 299 Maple Drive. Jennifer Schroeder's husband, if it matters. And we have been working on Chris, Josh, another guy that's not here today, and I have been working on a bike collector that's going to go on the back of the DRS. And so this is a bike that we found. And what did you want to say anything about it, Chris? Or
No,
are you going to say something later on? Or
well, if I have to say anything, we had our bike ride last weekend.
Right.
And we had 2 young girls there who were on their beginner bikes. And if we would have had a bike like that to begin with, they would have kept up with the group much
Right.
easier. So I really think that what we're doing is...
Well, that's fantastic, because I was sitting at home and Chris texted me and he's like, go to Coach Road, there's a bike on the side of the road, it's in mint condition. And so I told the kids to watch TV for 5 minutes and I ran up there and I just found this. And so, I mean, it's great because I think it's part of the entire board's focus, sustainability, recycling, and you can just find things like this on the side of the road. And literally, I spent 3 minutes on it. Chris showed up at my house and picked it up, and it's great workable condition now.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we're moving forward with that. We have space in the back of the DRS. I think we're looking at June 1st for just officers to get together and kind of have a rundown, look at the space, figure out a tool list, and it's definitely moving forward. So it's exciting.
Awesome. Thank you.
That's it.
Thanks, Scott. All right, anyone else for public comments? All right, thank you. All right, next piece of business here, we've got the staff update.
All right.
Staff update.
Thank you, board. So, this month's projects completed includes on Thursday, April 25th, we had the sea turtle nesting workshop. It was workshop number 14, continuing on with that green achievement target. Number 13, we have another one coming up this month, which I'll talk about in a minute. Also, on April 27th was the Coastal Garden Fair. I want to thank everybody who attended and everybody who was part of that event. It's a very successful event because of volunteers, both the beautification board and the sustainability board showed up in great numbers and great force to help out. Big thanks to board chair Christopher and Jennifer for helping out with that event. We had over 40 vendors, over 5 presenters, and over 100 attendees. Definitely bigger than last year, and it should prove to be more successful each year that we have it. And anyone that has any comments about it, please let us know how we can make it better in the future. On May 14th, there was a classroom presentation that I gave to Jamie Malta's fifth grade surf rider group. There was around 35 kids in the classroom, and we talked about stormwater education. This is part of our NPDES, National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System education requirement for the city. Those are some of the main projects completed this month. There was a few other things that we did at the garden for composting and everything like that, but that's just getting the ground ready for some bigger projects in the future. Work underway included the creation of the Earth Friendly Community Campaign and continuing to work on that with Councilwoman Mindy Gibson. That is ongoing. Also, we continue testing the natural herbicide alternatives to Roundup at the community garden location. There's, again, 6 different alternatives that we're testing, and it seems that number 5, Miramichi, is seeming to be the most cost-effective and environmentally friendly option in regards to replacing the glyphosate-based products. Continued work with Public Works for the next DeSoto planting as part of our DeSoto Stormwater Enhancement Project. Continued posting on Facebook. We did get a new intern recently to help with the Facebook. She's learning. It's a difficult process to learn exactly how to post to Facebook for a government entity regarding sustainability. So if you have any comments on how to help her do that, please let us know. And again, always please share anything that you want to have posted, and I'll try to make sure that gets on the list of things to post. John, you've been really good about that. Thank you for always putting in good input. Additionally, we created an unpaid, a paid internship for Hannah Vest. That is a FIT student. This paid internship for the summer of 2019 is going to focus on assisting with the development of the sustainability program and specifically the green achievement targets, mostly looking at GAT-19, testing and tracking synthetic fertilizers. She's got a background in chemical engineering, so it really fits well with her educational background. And again, that's Hannah Vest, the FIT intern, and Julia Brooks, the unpaid intern that's going to work on social media. Public events and meetings. The Brevard Sustainability Working Group meeting was on the 20th, and that was, again, very successful. Then the next one was on May 15th. The Dolores Sustainability Board meeting was the last one of the year. It went really well. The kids did get in contact with me recently and said they want to do one more thing before the end of their tenure as students at Delora. They want to do some planting. So we're going to do a little planting this weekend on Saturday. If anybody can join us, that'd be nice. We're just going to put in some flowering plants and try to beautify the entrance area at Delora a little bit. Their project to get the water fountain installed is a tentative success, depending on installation through Brevard County Public Schools. Future topics include the workshop on May 29th. It'll be right here in council chambers, where we'll talk about sustainable products and recycling. That's all part of Green Achievement Target number 7. And on the June 8th, Keep Brevard Beautiful Trash Bash will occur. And classroom presentations on the topic of stormwater will continue as well. I believe Holland will be our next step for that. And there is also the Brevard Sustainability Working Group meetings. The next one will be on June 17th. If there's any questions from the board, I'll be happy to answer those. I did attend a few other meetings. One of them was for the IRL National Scenic Byway, which I am now a member. And other than that, that's all my notes for this month. Any questions?
What time is the planting on Saturday?
We're looking at 9 in the morning to noon.
And related to, is my first meeting here, so, but the GAT number 19 and testing all of that, I might have missed conversations before, but what's sort of the longer term outcome then? You're testing number 5 is looking good. What then? Like what happens?
So with GAT-19, testing and tracking synthetic fertilizer use, we want to kind of look at surface water runoff, groundwater, and determine, what impact does our community have on the lagoon. So we're looking at different basins and the different outfalls, kind of how water moves from east to west because of the slope of the island, and we can hopefully then determine, are lagoon-friendly lawns really helping? If you have a bunch of those on a block, are they kind of soaking up some more nutrients, preventing the stormwater from penetrating into the soil? And what's the impact of your classic 1990s Florida, St. Augustine lawn, and that kind of thing. So we're kind of looking at the two differences, and hopefully we'll come back with some data. The students from FIT did a small project earlier, and we're using their data to kind of get us started. And I'd be happy to,
Yeah.
share that with you and anybody that wants to know more about that. It was a small project that we did just kind of with Kate Lindeman and some of the students over the last semester.
That's great. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Did that kind of answer what you were
It did. Yeah. Thank you.
Great.
All right, any further public comment? No? All right.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick. Next order of business, we have a presentation by Bob Atkins on manatees in the Indian River Lagoon.
Do you want me to use the mic, or can you hear me, or? I'm an old professor, I've had classes of 780, but I think I can reach you guys.
You'll be on camera if you stand there.
I'll be on camera? Then this is where I'll be.
You want me to go ahead and offer the button for you?
Just to give you a little background, because it's always nice to know, does the guy have any sense at all? I have a little, okay? I was a professor of mathematics in my first career. In my second career, I left the Kennedy Space Center as a senior guy for Lockheed Martin. I've been retired since 2011. I haven't made a penny, and I don't make money doing what I'm doing, but I've been part of this activity for 30 or more years. Let's go to the next chart. So I'm going to give you a little background on me and where I come from. I'll show you some data on seagrass and manatees. It's not my data, it's official state and federal data. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how that translates into carrying capacity, because there is a capacity, and then give you some ideas where we might go from here. Next. So I've been in Florida since '63. I spent high school and junior high in Orlando. I spent the decade of the 70s as a student and teacher at the University of Florida in mathematics. I left there and went and taught my last year at Embry-Riddle in Arizona. I can't stand dry. I spent a lot of time in California with X-33 in the 90s. I'm home, and I'm not leaving. In '94, actually starting in the 80s, I think Brevard County was targeted by the Save the Manatee Club. In the early years of the manatee endangerment situation, the three basic premises of manatee management were that the manatee is endangered in imminent threat of extinction, that the biggest reason that that was occurring was boats, and that the best way to fix that was slow speed zones. As it turns out, 30 years later, we know all of that was false, although there are still some who believe that it's true. So in that early days, Brevard County put together a manatee protection plan, and there were 31 of us that put that plan together. I was on that committee. In '94, we formed this organization, Citizens for Florida Waterways. Some people think it's anti-manatee. I like to think of it as pro-boating. There was no voice for boating in the manatee conversation, or very little. And what voice there was not the users, it was other, like commercial builders and sales and that kind of thing. In '95, we reconstituted the Space Coast Water Ski Club. We held tournaments in C-54 Canal. We also held some wakeboard tournaments in front of what was then Conky Joe's, which is now Squid Lips. So we were actually able to use the Indian River Lagoon for some higher speed activities. And then in 2013, Governor Scott appointed me to the Governor's Boating Advisory Council, and I've been a member of that ever since, although it was supposed to be a 2-year term. They seem to like me in the law enforcement side of fish and wildlife. I was just up there with them last week working the issue of working waterfronts and how to preserve the mom and pop fish houses and other businesses on the water that are being bought out by developers. city of Satellite Beach. If I came to Satellite Beach and I said, hey, I'd like to have this fish camp rezoned, and I'm going to build a 50-unit condominium, it's ka-ching. The tax base just got multiplied by 50, and so the city's happy, and the developer's happy, but the state loses because they lost out on that opportunity to continue to have that business that's been there forever. We've got a few that have happened here in Brevard. Banana River Marine was a 3-generation marine that sold for high dollar. Tingley's Harbor Square has now been done in the barge canal, and they're getting ready to put boats on the river from there, and that's another set of derelict boats to be. So I'm a waterfront resident. I had 2 slalom courses that I maintained in the Banana River. They're both slow speed zones. The first invitation from the county was to help them understand where the water sports areas were. So I gave them being the mathematician I am, I gave them a spreadsheet of about 20 of them, and 19 of them are slow speed zones. I guess that you would say I'm a recreational boating advocate. Let's go to the next page. In '94, we formed the Citizens for Florida Waterways to try to organize voters' voices. Then later on, about the turn of the century, we started working harder at trying to form a statewide coalition of voting advocacy. We held a meeting, and we invited Fish and Wildlife. They didn't like the way the meeting went, so they took that over. It became what's now called the Manatee Forum. So we're basically the instigators of what is now called the Manatee Forum. Any of you familiar with that? The Manatee Forum is U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Florida Fish and Wildlife, Save the Manatee Club, Sierra Club, Defenders of Wildlife, and a few folks that are there because there's another side to the story, and I'm one of those. I've consistently worked with County Commission. In 2006, the Commission passed a unanimous resolution to see if we could get another look at the speed zones, because we have more than most any. In 2016, we made another run at it. And both those, the first time it was basically ignored. The second time, after prodding, Fish and Wildlife responded to a unanimous Brevard County resolution with a letter that basically said, you didn't ask right. Didn't offer any help, didn't say where to go from here, just said, hey, sorry. Next page. So we're a strong advocate for science-based decisions. Opinions are politics. Science is data and analysis, okay? So what I'm going to do is show you some data today and let you think about it yourself. We wrote a 75-page document and delivered it to U.S. Fish and Wildlife in support of reclassification of the manatee from endangered to threatened. We actually requested that it be taken off the list entirely. We were told by U.S. Fish and Wildlife they used our data substantially in making that decision. You can find that document at cffw.org under library. In the 80s and 90s, we started asking the agencies when they were going to put in the zones, well, how many are there? How many should there be? And how many is enough? We were really getting at that question of carrying capacity. And if you look at the Endangered Species Act, you'll find that for each species that's required that they have what's called OSP, Optimum Sustainable Population. And what that means is enough to keep the animal alive, but not so many that it becomes a problem itself to its own species. Where we end up now is we're a little concerned about what's happened in Brevard, and it doesn't get a lot of publicity. So I'm going to show you some numbers that you've probably never seen. Next chart. If you want to save the Indian River, you need seagrass. End of discussion. The Indian River is not Tampa Bay. It is not the Crystal River. It is more like Lake Apopka. It's a closed system. And in a closed system, the nutrient loading capability is determined by the amount of vegetation in that system. End of discussion. So when you remove vegetation from the system, the nutrient loading goes beyond the capacity of the body of water. And that's what's happened in this river, okay? I'm not saying it's not a good thing to stop putting stuff into it, to stop the runoff, to stop the, to plug up the septic and sewer kinds of leaks. But until we get grass growing back, those are stopgap measures. They will not sustain. The only way to sustain the health of this closed system is to restore and replenish the seagrass. One of the things that I find, and I don't think everybody's aware of it, is the environmental work here in this river is dominated by manatee policy. Whatever the manatee needs, the manatee gets, and everybody else just follows in line. If you think about it, if you'll remember back to when we were dredging Crane Creek, and everybody was, well, why can't we dredge in these certain months? Well, because manatees were there. Well, what did that have to do with dredging? Well, it was just policy, okay? Next chart. You saw this chart from Dr. Jacoby last month. It's basically the blue bars give you acreage of seagrass. The red bars give you transect length, and the green give you density. And what this chart shows you is that not only have we lost grass, but we've lost density. And acreage times density is mass. And mass is the issue, okay? Mass is the answer. Mass of seagrass, not acreage, mass. This is around 2015. The situation has actually gotten worse. Go on. I don't know if Chuck showed you this, but the way they go about getting these numbers, they spend a lot of time. They do a lot of work. You have to give a lot of respect to St. Johns River Water Management District for what they do. And I am here to tell you that Lori and Bob and Chuck and I have had many a conversation, and we're all on the same page about seagrass and what they're doing. Next page. This kind of shows you that of what they've done, this is like circa 215, so it's old data, and it's not good anymore because it's much worse. There were 48,000 acres of seagrass left in IRL, in Brevard. Next chart. There were about 27,000 acres of seagrass within 1 day's swim of CCEC. Anybody know what CCEC is? Cape Canaveral Energy Center. That's the 2 power plants or the 1 power plant or however many power plants there are at Port St. John. Okay? So 27,000 acres were within a day's swim. How do I know a day's swim? I'm using data from Jane Provenza. Jane Provenza did a study for U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and it addressed warm water capacity. The purpose of her study was basically to try to answer the question, if we turn the water off at Canaveral, if we turn the hot water off at FPL, will the animals have enough warm water to survive? Whether you have realized it or not, you have one of the major warm water sources right here in your community. And that's why they congregate there. Berkeley Canal, okay? The third in this county is Sebastian River, okay? Those 3 areas are the major congregation. The power plant, Berkeley, and Sebastian. In fact, for years, that was the only place that the Fish and Wildlife ever counted manatees. They'd wait for a cold day, they'd go to those places, and they would count them, okay? Next. So if you look at seagrass in 2015, you had about 1,466 wet pounds per acre, okay? And in the summertime, it grows at about 5% a day, but in the wintertime, it's down to about 0.5 to 1%. Not my numbers. These are St. John's and Fish and Wildlife numbers, okay? So then if you look at a typical acre of seagrass during the 4 winter months, okay, down at the bottom where it says total production for an acre of seagrass, there's 1,466 pounds per acre. 120 days at 0.5% a day gives you total production of an acre of seagrass during the winter time at 2,300 pounds. And if you use the high growth rate, you get 3,200 pounds. That's the bound on an acre of seagrass during the winter. It's total production. That's what was there plus what grows, okay? Next page. Go back to that page. There are other numbers, okay? In the Provancha work, there was a 6,200 pound number. There was also a 14,000 pound number. But those numbers were being used in other areas of the state. The St. Johns River Water Management District was the 1,400 number. So I use it because I know how hard they work in this area, okay? So I like this chart because I'm going to walk over here. This is the chart you don't see. This is the story you don't hear. The green bars are how many manatees there are, okay? That number, if you can't read it, is 9,000. The red bars are that's the number you hear every day, how many died, okay? You can't even see the blue bars. That's how many were killed by watercraft, okay? So when you hear over and over and over again in the press that the watercraft are killing off the manatee, you can say, hey, and the sea's going to rise 6 feet too. Okay? These black bars are the basis for the crisis. These weren't counts. These were a couple of guys got together and thought how many there were. And they've been counting how many dead ones there were, and they scared themselves to death. They counted dead ones starting in 74. They never even started counting live ones until 91. And if you think about it, they're counting live ones. Do you think they're counting them all? They can't. They can count the ones they see, okay? So in 2010, and again, just in December of last year, they statistically determined what the population really is, okay? And they're about 25% off at their count. This is if you go back and you look at what U.S. Fish and Wildlife did, and their determination that it was no longer endangered but threatened, this is the number they used, 6,250 or whatever that number is. This is the new value, 8,810. 95% confidence is between 7 and 10,000. So this is what is now the official data point for manatee population. What's that mean? Well, it doesn't mean a lot unless you think about where are they. Next chart. What you don't see, and what I do see, is that every year when they do a synoptic survey, a count, there's a database produced. This database goes back to 1991 through January of this year. I think it's like 16,000 lines, okay? And it's every manatee and where they found. Here, look at all these in Satellite Beach. You know what that is? Berkeley Canal, okay? This is last year's count. And then here's the ones at the Florida Power and Light. You can't read that, but it's over 1,500 in the outflow. Imagine one disease, right? 1,500. Next chart. These are real numbers. This is data, okay? Going back to 2002, because I don't want to go back any farther, we're back around 500, clearly under 1,000. Right here at 2009, we just about doubled. What happened that year? You might remember? Think back to Chuck Jacoby. That was the year we lost the seagrass, wasn't it? And then, so, interestingly, the good news is that the synoptic surveys have been consistent. They've basically come in and counted in the same places they started counting in 1991. That's good because it says, hey, we're counting the same way, the numbers are somewhat comparable. It's bad because the manatees have spread out all over the place. And the evidence of that is, when FPL converted from oil to natural gas, there was a period of time where the power plant wasn't active, so they put heaters in. But FPL was challenged because they were moving where the outflow was going to be by a few hundred yards. The state and feds challenged FPL to make sure that these animals found the new warm water source a few hundred yards away. So consequently, between the years of 2009 and 2015, we had the good fortune of FPL hiring the same people that did the synoptic surveys once a year. They did surveys every 2 weeks from October to March in these years. These are the average counts. These are the high counts. If they counted them, they were there. It's not, it might have been, it was. 1,792 they counted. The difference, we got a little bit unnerved with the state because this count was 1 week away from that count. Right. And the answer is, where they're counting, these guys were counting everywhere. So this was a much better indication of how many animals were here in the area. Somehow now that the state got a little better, or they got a little easier to count, because look at how many are showing up in the PowerPoint. But we'll talk about this last line in a minute. It's got some interesting implications. That's this year. Last year, 1,800, 1,500 at the power plant. Year before that, 2,000, 1,400 at the power plant. Of the whole East Coast population, this is it, 2 out of 3 were here in Brevard, and 1 out of 2 was in the power plant. Okay? Now you're going to think about that for a minute. Where'd that power plant come from? Us. When was it put in? 1960. When was it told to shut up its water off? The Clean Water Act of 1974. FPL had plants around the state. Think about it. Every one of them sitting on a waterway. Okay? Every one of them was being fed by oil barges. Everywhere the oil barges went, manatees were being chopped up. FPL, you gotta love them. If you can't fix it, feature it. So instead of spending about $4 million or $5 million per plant to redo their warm water outflow, they had the government declare them as manatee sanctuary. Okay? And that's exactly what happened. And beyond that, you go back and check history, and some of you are old enough. You remember the green Save the Manatee stickers? You remember what was in the bottom right-hand corner? Anybody say it?
Yeah.
Say it.
It's FPL.
That's right.
Yeah, I remember.
So instead of spending all that money fixing their problem, they spent $7,500 or $75,000 each year. They put up the Manatee Club. They funded it. And the Manatee Club changed both barge collision to watercraft and helped to preserve their warm water outflow. So we built this whole situation ourselves. Okay. You don't have to believe me. You can look up. Next chart. So this is the Brevard County picture. Every one of these is a count of one kind or another in Brevard County. You can see right up until about here, everything's below the 1,000. And all of a sudden here, it's like, boom. And then it's dropped off again. I think it's the drop-off that becomes more interesting. Question?
No, I'm just stretching.
Me too. Next chart. This is what the lagoon looks like. This is probably the chart that Chuck showed you, if I'm not mistaken. Anybody seen this chart? Yes or no?
Yes.
But you can see what's happened is that the densities and the transects have dropped off the chart. So even if you have 100 acres and you only have half the density or a tenth the density, you don't have the mass. Manatees don't eat acres, they eat mass. Okay? Next. So here's the seagrass chart and the manatee chart. You can look for yourself. Next chart. So how much do they eat? This is a question, when I couldn't get answers from the feds of the state about how much, what's carrying capacity, a buddy of mine and I said, no, we can calculate that. Let's just ask him some point-blank questions. So we asked him, what's the size of a manatee, the average? What's their average daily consumption? And what's the density of seagrass in the river? So we asked him a fourth question because at the time I thought there was another side of it that I cared about. I no longer care about it, but the fourth question was, what's the chemical composition of their food? Okay? How much of that nutrient that was in the grass is going right back into the river? It's free. Okay? When I looked at the grass consumption, I didn't care about that because the grass consumption itself is alarming. So the first time I did it, I said, well, we'll look at how much they eat the whole year. And I did that in May of 2014. And basically I put myself in front of the state and the federal government and I said, darts, hit it, right? Either tell me I'm wrong, get mad enough to do the job yourself, I don't care, okay? I got a lot of good input in terms of all the things I did wrong in May of 2014. One of the basic ones was, I assumed that there were 2,000 here in the winter, there were 2,000 here all year. But I couldn't prove that. They couldn't prove that it weren't, but they couldn't refute their own numbers that they were here in the winter. So I went back and said, okay, let's just look at the winter. A manatee eats between 4 and 9% of its body weight each day. If you take a 1,000-pound manatee, that's between 41 and 94 pounds a day. 240 days in the summer, that's this much grass. 120 days in the winter, that's this much grass. Max. Go back to how much mass is there in an acre of seagrass? Not there, right? I'll come back to it. Next chart. 2,300 to 3,200 pounds of grass per acre was the number that was valid in 2015. So each of those animals eats between the total production between an acre and a half and 5 acres. Now, when I first came up with that number, I said, hey, I don't know, nobody's going to buy that, right? So I went to IFAS. Anybody know what IFAS is? Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences out of the University of Florida. You know what they do for farmers and ranchers? They tell them what the capacity of their pasture land is, okay? You can look it up. Native Florida pasture land can support about 1 cow on every 5 to 20 acres. Okay? So these numbers are not that much different when you think about that. Now, when IFAS does it, they're not talking about how much grass that cow is going to eat. They're talking about how much grass it's going to take for that cow to eat forever. Okay? I'm just talking about how much it's going to eat. And it's the total production of that many acres. Next chart. With 2,000 animals in the county in the winter, that's how many acres of seagrass, total production, are required to support them. These numbers are significant. And they're even more significant when you think about them in terms of relativity to the total number of acres we now have. And even more concerning when you think about not acres, but density and mass. Because I'm telling you, my numbers on production are way high to what we have today. Next chart. So really, if there isn't that much grass, how much would you need to sustain them? Okay? Not to mention everything else that lives in that grass, and it needs that grass for its life cycle. So it's not unreasonable. In fact, I think it's ridiculously conservative to give them double. Okay? It's going to take 2 acres for each manatee to have 1 acre. Okay? which means that we really need about 19,000, 6 to 20,000 acres of seagrass just to keep the herd healthy in the winter. Next chart. The problem we have is biology, the manatee and the grass. Okay? Look at a cow. Teeth. Look at a sheep. Teeth. Do you know what the argument between cattle ranchers and sheep ranchers really was? The sheep's jaw extended beyond the reach of the cow. And so when the sheep took the grass down, they took it down to a point where the cow couldn't reach it. And so they killed the pasture from a cattleman's perspective. They didn't kill the pasture. A manatee is a very interesting animal. I'm going to tell you something you don't know. Okay? First of all, they don't have any teeth in the front. They have a split lip gum in the top and a solid gum at the bottom. They have molars. They have marching molars. You know how shark's teeth do this? Manatees' molars actually march forward as they grind them off. It's kind of interesting. I find that neat. But the problem is, they can't bite. They grab and they pull. Now, it's not entirely true that they can't bite. There's some grasses that they can rip. The problem we have is that we're Halladoodle. When you think of Halladoodle, think of a green onion. Okay? And think about trying to pull the leaf off a green onion. You're going to pull it out of the ground. And that's exactly what's happening here. Only nobody wants to talk about it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what it means if it's true. I'm not going to tell you it's true. I'm just going to tell you what it means if it is. Okay? Next. This is the really sick part. This is from the Seagrass Integrated Mapping and Monitoring Group out of Tallahassee. And this data is fed to Tallahassee by Chuck and his group. Okay? This was the data from October of 2016. When I came in and gave my update on carrying capacity, they loaded up with seagrass people to try to work the issue. This number was scary. And the fact is that it's all Halladoodle, predominantly Halladoodle, the dark green. Okay? Next chart's going to make you mad. Next chart. So we have a power plant keeping 2,000 animals in Brevard County that would normally migrate when below us is 1.6 million acres of seagrass. Just doesn't make sense. Next. Well, what happens if they pull it out? How does that affect it? I can tell you what I've observed, but I'm just going to show you some numbers and let you think about it. But my observation is when they pull it out, it's gone forever. I've got areas in the river that used to be grass. I saw it go away. It's never come back. But there's an argument out there. Say the Manatee Club says, they don't uproot it. In fact, they propagate it. They make it spread. I'm like, okay. But the question then is, if they say there isn't any, and I know there's a lot, where is that number? And then the second part of that question is, if some of it gets pulled up, how long does it take to grow back? Those are two independent variables, and sometimes that makes the problem just a little bit harder. Next chart. If you get lost in this one, it's okay. You think about how much it takes for them to be fed, okay? And then throw in a number, what percentage of what they forage on is actually being uprooted. And then throw in another number, how many years that's going to take to recover. And really, then you come back with, you get a percentage loss. And it's 1 minus 1 over the number of years to recover times the rate uprooted. So as an example, if 5% of what they eat they yank. And it takes 3 years for that to grow back. Both very conservative in my mind. You lose 3% of the seagrass a year, 3% of whatever it was they were foraging on. So if they're foraging on that 3 to 9,000, 3 to 10,000, you're going to lose 100 to 300 acres a year, every year. And it won't come back. It's like taking money out of your savings. If you're not putting money back in, your savings goes down. Yeah.
Is that per manatee or is that per population of 2,000?
That's basically, if you have 2,000 manatees,
Gotcha.
and they're eating this much production, and they're uprooting 5% of what they eat, and it takes 3 years to grow back, you're going to lose that much permanently every year.
Thank
So
you.
after 10 years, it's a big number. Next chart. It's easy to build these charts. This is the 5% chart. Along the bottom is years, okay? So this is 5% uprooting, and this is the number of years to recover. And this is that same example I just showed you, okay? This chart's going to scare you. Next chart. Suppose it's as much as 40%, and suppose it takes 5 years to grow back. You're going to lose 320 acres of every 1,000 every year. And over time, over 10 years, that 1,000 acres that gets grazed is going to be down to less than 50. And that's compounding regrowth. That ought to scare you. Next. So the net effect of uprooting is you got continuous loss of grass. There's no coming back from it until you get it to grow back. Okay? But if they come back every year to eat, you're going to lose more that year. The question is, how much? And the other thing, conjecture is, hey, if there's less grass out there, there's probably more uprooting because they're desperate. And the other one is, the carrying capacity is effectively higher. Next. So what do we do? What do we do? I think the first thing we have to think about is that we have to change our philosophy about management. More is not better. Not always. Not with anything. There is a point at which it's time to start managing the more. And in the case of Brevard County, we're at that point. It's time to start figuring out a way to reduce our winter herd, because that is not natural. These animals will go away chasing more water. But even more strongly than that, they'll go away chasing food, because they have a survival instinct just like every other animal. I want you to go back to the chart with the numbers are. About five back. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. More. There. Look what happened in 2018. They had come back. Maine. 1,400 didn't get counted. Maine. The West Coast numbers are the same. When I look at data like this, being a mathematician, statistician, rocket scientist, whatever you want to call it, I got to know what happened. What happened? I come up with a few things that might have happened. One is water was so big they couldn't see them. And that's possible. Okay? And I would say, well, there's 1,400 more here than we know. Another is, they left. They found food somewhere else. They didn't stay here because there wasn't enough for them to survive. Another is, I have another one, but it's going to slip my mind. But the point being this, if the latter is true, if they went somewhere else because there wasn't enough food here, then I don't think we have to worry about turning off the water. They already know the gifts and warnings. They're not stupid. They're going to survive. They need to eat to survive. They need both food and warmth to survive. You take away the food, they're gone. That's my theory. What will happen? Oh, I thought we were going fast. No.
Are we asking questions?
Yeah, please.
Oh, sure. So, last month, Dr. Jacoby was here, and that was really helpful in terms of in-depth seagrass numbers, and I love numbers, I love data, so I appreciate that. No, and very similar to some of these slides. So it seems like a very multifaceted issue. So seagrass is an indicator of health, maybe not necessarily the only thing that brings the lagoon back, but an indicator definitely. Also, when asked about the one thing that would help seagrass, he said reduction of fertilizer, if not, elimination. So I think what I took away from your presentation, which is very good, detail and depth data, is it's a multifaceted kind of problem. And as you're saying, reduce the manatee population. So if you could go into a little bit more detail about what you think, or with some consideration also to the multifaceted ecosystem here.
That's the $64 million question. I've had more conversations with U.S. Fish and Wildlife than you care to know.
Well, let me also ask you to go a little deeper, though, in terms of not just saying, done, end of discussion, reduce the manatees, but speak to the multifaceted nature of that, as you said.
How many of you know what caused the algae bloom? What's the theory?
Well, the theory is that the algae bloom is caused by the excess nutrients.
Right.
They feed off of that.
Right.
And that's bad because that introduces a lot of chlorine.
Okay, so let's get down to root cause. What's the root cause of the algae bloom?
Well, if you don't have seagrass, that means you don't have sunlight and
You don't have anything to absorb the nutrient, you lost your whole filter bed.
they absorb the nitrogen out of the water.
So what do you think came first? The chicken or the egg? The loss of seagrass or the bloom? Now there's no doubt that once the loss of seagrass set off the bloom, that the bloom made it worse because it blocked the light and it killed more grass. So we got into this cycle, right? But I come back to, if you go back to the charts, the drop in grass and the rise in consumption are right there. Now that's just data. I can't prove it. But it certainly is more interesting than you think, and it certainly makes you ask the question, why is nobody looking at that? Okay? How many of you have seen the data on how many manatees there were in Brevard County before? I don't see any hands. Okay. That's amazing. Why do you not see it?
So would you say that your main issue is we need better data and we need more consistent counts? You say the case is closed.
I'm saying that we need to do what David Lace of the Marine Mammal Protection Agency said to me after the first time I showed him this data. Keep talking. We don't have a population problem, but we sure as hell have a distribution problem. Okay? And what is the root cause of that distribution problem? Man. Us. No, us. People. We did it. Okay, we did it. You can't blame FPL. They'll blame Fish and Wildlife. They won't let them turn the water off. You can't blame Fish and Wildlife. They'll blame FPL. Doesn't matter. We did it. Yes.
My question, I have a question. What do you plan to do if that data that you have right there spikes back up? What's your conclusion?
Man, I wish I was God.
Well, I mean, what direction do you think you're going to go?
I don't see the river recovering until the manatees decide it's time to leave.
They decide that there is not enough grass.
Right.
I
think they'll leave. I think we might be seeing an indication of that. Okay.
We just had Fish and Wildlife here shove a tube down some manatees' throats and pull all the contents of their stomach out, and they're analyzing what is it that they're actually
I can tell you what, if you speak to Martine DeWitt, I wouldn't want her job. Or not, I don't care how much they pay her. She's the one that gets to come all open with that. Okay. And so when we started having this unusual mortality now about 3 or 4 years ago, we lost 150 or 160 or whatever number you want to pick, it's somewhere in there. I asked Martine, I said, Martine, what's in their death? I said, how does it compare to the ones you cut up before? Much more driftality and much less grass. Okay.
From my perspective, I see kind of two issues. There's with the unnatural heated water, we're attracting manatees who in a natural state wouldn't be here, which is causing a depletion of the grass, and that's having a
Certainly, it certainly might be contributing to it.
Okay, but so to me, that's a philosophically at least a potentially easy fix if man stops unnaturally affecting the state of the lagoon that's causing overpopulation. There's that issue over here. You talked before about boating, and my family's been boating on the Indian River Lagoon since the early 60s, and we still love doing it. And I think that there's some places where there's a slow speed zone where it's not necessary. Right. But I've seen, and I'm sure else has seen here too, a manatee that's been struck by a propeller, and I think that that's a horrific outcome to have for. It's just patently unfair.
So is a raccoon being run over by a car. He's still right.
But I mean, you're not advocating for getting rid of slow wake zones as a means of population control, right?
No, did I mention slow speed zones since the first chart?
But I'm just saying it sounds like.
Would I like to see them go away? You betcha. Okay, it's not all of them, but certainly some of them. I think that's talking Kurt and the county commission agreed.
But not as a means of controlling.
Not as a means of controlling population. You know, if you go to Fish and Wildlife, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and you say, hey, wow, you know, we're down to the threatened, and we really could be down to not on the list. They'll brag about how much those zones have made a difference. Go back up 2 charts. Which way? Forward, backwards. 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 Right there. Watercraft mortality never made a difference. It never mattered. In the big picture. You can't manage a species by managing each specimen. When you start naming an animal and worrying about whether that animal lives or dies over the next 5 days, you've made a big mistake in species management. Period. Okay?
Is there any data on the no-wake zones in terms of affecting seagrass?
I don't know about affecting
Like
seagrass.
taking that away? Because I'm trying to look it up on last month's PowerPoint, but I have a vague recall that could have an impact. So
if you go down to the Keys and you go out into the flats behind the Keys on the Gulf side, you can see props cars like crazy. Yes. 2 things about those props cars. One is that they're there and it's a shame. The other is they seem to last forever, which lends a lot of credence to once you pull it out, it doesn't go back well.
Yeah. Right, but it also says go slowly on maybe getting rid of no way.
Really what they've done in the Keys where they wanted to protect grass,
right.
and no boater wants to hit bottom anyway, they basically said no motorized craft, period. And it works. And you can do that here. The problem we have here is we have zones where it's 5 feet of water. We have a zone in the Bard Canal where it's 12 feet of water. I really don't want to talk about zones, okay, because that takes the subject to a place where you're going to taint what I'm trying to tell you.
I just wondered, can you clarify what you said again about the Clean Water Act and the FBL plant?
Thermal pollution, illegal.
Well, no, you mentioned the history there and how after the criticism of the Clean Water Act.
They got by it by having the hot water declared as a manatee sanctuary. And that happened back in this time frame when all we knew was some of them were dying. In fact, an alarming number of them were dying because we didn't think there were that many. Okay, we weren't counting live ones. You know what a swag is? About to tell you. Silly wild, yes. Okay, that's what these are. Back in these days, they used to count manatees at Blue Springs. You know what the count was? About 50. You know what the count was this year?
600.
Hey, Bob, I'm thoroughly enjoying this presentation, but is there any way, could you wrap it up?
Okay, I want to say one last thing, and it gets back to some of the questions you've asked. What do you do? Well, the fear is if you turn the water off, we're going to count 600 thermal deaths. And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife can't even fathom the press they would get from that. That's their biggest fear. If they change the water and the manatees' habits don't change, they might create a whole bunch of death. Because the water won't be warm enough and they won't leave. Two charge that. Keep going. No, back the other way. Yeah, right, that there. That was the numbers. Okay. If you look here, the argument is they've been doing it for 6 years. That's true. But not these guys. They've only found that water 4 or 5 years ago. So their habits wouldn't be that hard to change. And these are the kinds of conversations I'm trying to get stirred into the agencies. Hey, maybe it's not that big a risk.
Right.
To at least tone it down.
Maybe now's the time since the population is supposedly lower.
Right.
Well,
And I really think that that's the first step we have to make, and I've been working with some folks you know to try to see if we can convince other people of that.
cool.
Yeah.
Bob, do you know the number of manatees in Florida versus the number in Brevard?
Yeah. It's about 8,000 in Florida, 8,000 or 9,000 in Florida. It's that many in the winter.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
In the winter. You just made me think of something else and
Do
forgot
you
it.
know how other areas are being reflected by, are there any other areas that have high populations like that?
Not like this, not like this, because it's a terrible collection of stuff. I can't think of the right words, I'm too old.
Do we have any,
Hell, I'm old.
do we have any case studies of power plants that were manatee congregation areas that have been turned off in the
Not that I know of.
Okay.
Most of them have been, they're like written into the perpetuity. You will put water out.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. Any further public comment?
I've got a comment. A lot of people may not know this, but.
Sir, if you can come up to the microphone.
My name's Gary Haw. I live up in Merritt Island. I've lived in Florida my whole life. I'm 60, almost 65. A lot of people don't know that up into like the late 40s, early 50s, there wasn't any manatees up here. Very few were seen up in this area. It didn't happen until people came along, built canals, built power plants. Then they came up here and stayed. They used to migrate. We never had a problem with, 50, 60 years ago. A lot of younger people don't realize, they think manatees have been here all along. But it was rare to see them north of Tampa Bay and north of what is now Sebastian Inlet. A few would come up here at certain times. And manatees are native to the state of Florida.
I want to add one more thing. I don't give the Fish and Wildlife credit for saving the manatee. I'll tell you what I give credit for saving the manatee. People quit eating them. Their only natural predator was man. And man was their predator from time started until about 1950, 1960, as late as 1970. People were eating manatees. Best book you can read is a book written by an author, a reporter out of Tampa. It's called Manatee Insanity. Okay? The first Save the Manatee action by the state of Florida was in 1896. In 1896, the legislature decided that if they kept eating them in those restaurants in Miami, on the river in Miami, we were going to run out. Not only that, if they kept taking them up to those Yankee zoos and put them on display, we were going to run out of manatees. So they licensed restaurants that could serve them. Throw it out there.
Well,
I don't, I only taste the mashed potatoes.
The red meat?
That's not where I come from. Where I come from is that river is more important than any one species, period.
Yeah.
And whatever it takes to save the river, that's where we ought to go,
That's right.
period.
Well, thank you very much, Bob. Thank you.
Thanks for
That book is available on Amazon.
All right, I wrote it down, I'll check it out. Next order of business, we've got a presentation by Leslie Maloney. Are you by yourself today? Yes. Okay, Leslie, she's got a presentation on the Sierra Club Ready for 100 campaign.
So I'm Leslie Maloney, I'm Melbourne Beach, Florida. I'm representing Turtle Cove Sierra Club, and I see some familiar faces on the board. Thank you for having me here tonight. And I just want to commend you for all the cool things that you're doing in Satellite Beach in terms of sustainability. I think you know you're a leader in Brevard County, so keep up the good work. Let me get the clicker, excuse me. So how many of you all got to see the email I sent about 2 weeks ago on Ready for 100? Anybody get a chance to look at any of that? Okay, so maybe go back in your emails, or I can certainly send that again. But anybody here heard of Ready for 100 in terms of Sierra Club? So, okay, a couple of you.
Actually, I did see the email. Yeah.
So Ready for 100 is a campaign, national campaign that Sierra Club is involved with, helping cities set goals to be 100% clean energy by 2030 in city operations and 2050 within city limits. Some folks feel like that's too far out and want to bring it down, some cities, but that's essentially the template, if you will, that we're working with. So like I mentioned, it's a national campaign engaging cities to reach those goals. And we're also about, it's clean energy for all. It's not just clean energy for some areas of certain cities, it's clean areas for everybody in the city. So we're really about the equity and fairness there. The science is out there. We know, why now. We're getting all kinds of data that we need to move to clean energy on every level. 2018 fourth warmest, on record. So the time is now for this to happen, and we do have momentum with this program. So how are we doing that? We're going around and we're interviewing and working with different cities, sustainability boards, city councils, and so on, because this is really a grassroots effort. That's where, we're not waiting for the federal level to make a change. It's not going to happen there. It's got to come from the grassroots level. So besides working with the legislators in the different areas, we're working with the community to build support and understanding of what we're trying to do there, and to educate in that process as well. And we want to get consensus, because really, it's only going to work because this is a goal that we have to see through. It's going to take time, and if you don't have consensus, people aren't going to see it through, no matter where you are. Okay, fossil fuels versus renewables. I probably don't have to tell this board about that too much, but those in red, all different fossil fuels there. We see the CO2 that's emitted from those, and then we start to talk about wind and solar. It's zero. So it's a no-brainer here. And like I said, you guys have already taken some major steps in that direction. So how do we get to 100% clean energy? How does Florida get to 100% clean energy? These are some of the cities. Actually, we've had a few more since this particular slide, but these are some of the cities that have already joined the Ready for 100 campaign and set goals. St. Petersburg was the first, Dunedin, Largo. Dunedin is about, I believe 37,000 people. You all are, around 20,000, I believe, but they're a little closer to your size. Largo, Gainesville, Orlando, Tallahassee, Sarasota, South Miami just came on board, I think a week or two ago, and there's several more in South Florida that are getting ready to come on board. But in general, we have 5 states that have made this commitment, 11 counties, 120 cities. I think it's up to about 122 or 123 at this point. And well, let me introduce, this is Brooke Alexander in the back. She is a staffer for Sierra Club that's just been hired to work the east central coast of Florida in terms of helping cities, get on board here. So she will be working with you if y'all are interested in going forward. And Chicago just came on board, and so it's just, I think you all are probably reading a lot of the same things that I'm reading, and you're just seeing one thing after another as far as clean energy goes. So Chicago was pretty recently as well. More going on across the state here with this. You might have heard of TECO, that's Tampa Electric, over in Tampa Bay. They want to build a new plant over there. In the face of all the data of what's going on, especially in Tampa, who's at ground zero, they're in a very serious situation there as far as climate change. And they're wanting to move forward with another plant. And so there's been a huge movement over there and pushback in the community and just saying, no, now is the time. Why are we using old technology here? We need to stop this and move forward. The other thing too is about EVs. In addition to, and I don't know how much you all are doing with your fleets, but electric vehicles is another component in this as well. Solar is probably going to be, it's Florida, right? So solar is going to be the thing we turn to more than anything else. But we need to be looking at EVs and some of the planning down the road for that sort of thing as well. Some data here on electric buses. And once again, when you're dealing with EVs, anybody here on the board have an electric vehicle, by the way? Not yet? Hybrid? Okay. Nick does. All right, cool. Yeah, we're getting there. And once again, that's just got huge momentum as well. So you can't beat zero. Okay, so that's just a little introduction to the Ready for 100 campaign. I didn't want to bombard you with a whole bunch of data, but we're hoping that, you're the advisors to the city council on things like this. And so we're hoping that you're in support and we're hoping to get a resolution passed, basically, from the city council saying that, yeah, we're going to actually, and you already have a sustainability plan and you're already setting goals. So this is just one more feather in your cap, so to speak. And like I mentioned, this is a huge campaign, so any resources that we have as far as Sierra Club goes, we are glad to offer. So any questions?
Yeah, so, and I was wondering about sort of that connection in terms of tangible. It sounds like support, information, coordination in some way, and then just trying to promote localities to pass resolutions that are aligned. Exactly. We are working, and that's why Brooke was just hired, because this area is kind of like, it's ripe. And you saw that Orlando was on there, and all the good things going on, especially with Chris Castro. I know you all have had him here for a workshop. But there are other cities in Brevard here that we're talking to as well. So we're just hoping that, when one starts to do it, another one does. So not only will you be the leader again, most likely, but in this, but you'll also be setting, precedent for the other cities to go, oh, yeah, Satellite Beach is doing it.
There is a difference between this area and Orlando. OUC, okay? Orlando controls that. We do not control FPL, which is the largest electric provider in the state.
That is true, yes. And so
until that changes, now they're doing some things down in southwest Florida. They've got the largest solar with batteries system, I understand, on the continent now. But that model is that they control the source. What we've been pursuing here with the solar on the roof is distributed. Now, just today, I saw an article that Duke Energy in North Carolina, right on the border with Tennessee, which is Appalachia, there's a community there of about 600 or 700 people. I expect it's hard to get to electric to. And they are installing their first microgrid, which will keep that community powered by solar 100% of the time. And so they don't need a transmission line there that's functioning all the time. And so the question is anybody working on persuading FPL to change their business plan?
And that's a great question. And so you're correct. Orlando, Tallahassee, and Gainesville are all more independent in that respect. The cities that have joined us on this campaign, Sarasota deals with FPL, and South Miami that just came on board deals with FPL. So we're just starting to get cities into this campaign. Up so far, to this point, we haven't had to be dealing with FPL. So that will be something to look at. The first thing, and Nick and I talked about this, you have to look at your franchise agreement with FPL and see when it expires. And I don't know if okay, it's a ways out, yeah. So, but yes, there are some ways to, and that's where we can come in and help, because we have cities in motion already. And that's down the line. If you're locked in for another 20 years, then you're going to have to work around FPL. But there is a franchise agreement every city has with them. So they're powerful, no question.
I guess my point is resolutions are great, and they're useless unless there's some engineering behind it.
Absolutely.
And planning. And so I would not be proposing Satellite Beach. Council sit here and do a resolution. Everybody feels good. Unless behind the resolution says, here's the steps we intend to take, so by that year, we're done.
Yes.
And so I would suggest, if anybody was interested in the city doing it, I'd suggest that there be samples of that kind of flow chart, if you want to call it, planning document behind any of these votes of 100% and say, hey, folks, here's examples to you.
We have that.
We are shameless about stealing other people's
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah, and we have that. There's many, many examples to build from. So, yes, that's where all the resources come in. And because each city is unique in what they're dealing with, and, but you all are on your way because you've got a sustainability plan, and this, you're just kind of fattening it up even more. So, but those resources are there.
Because all the information I've seen says this city can produce 100% of what we consume on our rooftops.
Yeah.
Nick,
good
quick
stuff.
Question. Do you remember when Zach was working on this? I mean, we talked about this a couple years ago with Zach. I don't know if you remember this or not, but.
So there was two things that we worked on with Zach that you might be thinking of. One was the FIT grant that we applied for.
No. He was going to bring this up, Frank. I don't know why it never happened. I almost was under the impression.
Specifically the Ready for 100?
Yeah, I was almost under the impression we already had this until you brought it up recently that we didn't.
So we had something similar to this that was David R. Scheckner put forward in '99, but it wasn't exactly.
No. I talked to Zach about specifically this because I was talking with my friend Patrick that you met, or you were on the phone call with, about this, but I just don't remember why it never happened.
I don't know.
I'm in agreement. I feel like I remember. I don't know if
We
I
talked
heard Frank
about
talk.
this.
I don't know who I heard.
But
And it
I
might
don't
be
remember
that.
why. Maybe we need to circle back around to Zach and just check what happened there too, maybe?
Well, I mean.
I don't know if there was something.
There wasn't a resolution that was passed.
I know there wasn't a resolution, obviously, not at this point, but.
I think the thing that was happening then may have been the Green Achievement Target number 1, to put solar on municipal facilities.
Maybe he's using it in line with it?
I think that was probably part of that, that was in line with it, and then to John's point, like, you need to have a plan, and that was our plan, is to do that on municipal buildings, And, that's how we would, go to getting there, as well as reducing LED usage, which would reduce power and other things of that nature. So creating a plan, we could probably pull a lot of that out of the Sustainable Action Plan and retool it to that purpose.
It may have been around that same time that we did the Sustainability Action Plan, and that we just felt that it was pretty much.
I think it was just after, but it was around that time that he brought this up. And I remember talking to him because I have a friend, Patrick, that works with Sierra Club, and and so we were going to do this, but I was actually under the impression it already happened.
Is that Patrick down in the Everglades?
Yeah, Patrick. Yeah. So up until about 2 months ago, when Nick was kind of referencing talking to Patrick about this, I was like, wait, I thought we already did this a year ago.
Maybe it's the whole FPL thing.
Well, yeah, part of it too is FPL, and I forget how many lobbyists they have, but it's a huge number.
Yeah.
And really, the way to get their attention is for grassroots to, and I'm talking the 100s plus anybody else that want to tag along, to come up with some kind of proposal that says, here's how we'd like to see the rules changed. And of course, you're dealing with an organization that wanted to have Amendment 1 passed, but anyway, to basically decide what is the right model and say, and basically begin to pressure whoever needs pressuring, whether it's the legislature or the Public Utilities Commission, whoever, that this is the model that should be adopted in this state.
And that's the intent of this campaign, is to start to put pressure, and FPL is noticing all the cities getting on board with this, and they are, so that's what we're trying to achieve here.
Yeah, except I can see the path they're taking. They'll own all the sewers.
That's what they'd like. Yeah, that's what they'd like.
I've got, I guess, a question and then a comment. My question, maybe a dumb one. I mean, we are totally trapped with FPL here unless you can make your house sustainable on your own, which I'm not equipped to do. And this, I may be buying snake oil and doing this, and maybe you can tell me. I do this thing called Arcadia Power, where basically if you try to offset, I mean that's the best solution I could find with my limited, I guess, ability to be effective in making my grid more sustainable. Would that count in your view? Because I mean I have two minds of it. Part of me, I'm like, well, maybe I'm just kind of subsidizing FPL not changing by doing this. And what are your thoughts on that?
I know what you're talking about,
Yeah.
and I've sort of looked into it, and I have read pros and cons, and so I personally, because of that, didn't get involved, but I really can't specifically say for sure, because there are differing opinions on whether it's helpful or not.
But I mean, my second comment is, to me, this seems like in 2030 and 2050 are far enough out. I mean, we went to the moon in less than a decade. I mean, I think that setting a goal is a good thing, and I'm in favor of it in that regard. I think that's certainly enough time to figure out a plan.
FPL actually is, and I only have just very hazy information on it. They are developing the concept where their customers can pay a token amount extra each month on their bill. And what that money goes towards is investing in these very large arrays. And that over time, as that array is producing more and more electricity, you will get credit for that electricity it produces. But I haven't seen the numbers, which is the problem, because that, if it turns out that, let's say, it has a 5 or a 10-year payback, everybody should do it. If it's a 50-year payback or something like that, then it's dumb. And so the point is, FPL is doing something, and are you saying you know something about it?
It's already going to be council.
It's what?
It's already been brought to us as an option. We kind but just, and also, from my perspective, I can only speak for me, you know, it looked to potentially put the small business solar people out. So basically, the concept was you buy your own solar arrays, and you pay this extra money, and you're investing in these solar arrays, but you don't really own them, right? FPL owns them. But you are investing in, you know, cleaner energy, which, you know, not all cities have that option. So for us, we kind of tabled it just because I don't want to put the local solar guy out of business so that FPL can make more money.
When you say us, you talking about you or the city?
The city. They brought it to the council. It started from the council through our deputy city manager.
I think it would be interesting if that went to the board. Whatever you got from FPL.
You could talk to Liz if you were interested in the whole presentation, because she gave us a whole entire presentation.
Well, what I'm suggesting is that each one of us gets a copy of whatever they provided the city. That's easy. Julie does it on all kinds of things. And again, that goes back. That's their business model, is they control the source. I don't agree with that. And that's, I guess, my point with this. I would really want to see the 100% saying, no, you don't own the source.
Sure. Yeah, and just to address your point, I think a lot of this campaign, you know, when someone is looking at it in a presentation like this, a really important, to your point, a really important part of this is not just about making this transition happen by a certain date. A lot of it is education, which is where I'm going to come in. So educating people on how to make their homes more energy efficient is the first place to start. And I think this can seem very overwhelming. Obviously, we know FPL is not exactly going to be the easiest to work with, and we recognize that. But I think a lot of this is going to come from an education campaign, which is where I'll come in, where Leslie will come in to just educate our citizens in these cities. I come to you halfway through my second week with the Sierra Club, so that's why I wanted to go ahead and let Leslie do this presentation, just because she already had it put together. But I definitely plan on talking to all of you. I would like to have meetings with you, phone calls, email exchanges, whatever it is, so that we can work together and you can tell me what's best for your city. I live in Volusia County. I live in New Smyrna Beach, just south of Daytona, and New Smyrna is another one of our target cities. And what works there isn't going to be the same thing that works here. So my job is to work with you on wording these resolutions to make sure that they are what is in fact best for your city. But we also recognize that this isn't going to happen overnight. So it's going to take all of your input, all of your ideas, educate me on the background of your city, because, you know, I'm not from here. So for me, I just want to learn from all of you and then be able to put a plan together, because this is not out of reach. I know it seems really overwhelming, but we've seen cities that you'd never think would commit to it, such as Orlando. You know, Orlando itself is actually not that large. People think of Disney and everything like that as being part of Orlando, but Orlando is in fact pretty small. So just wanted to put that out there for you guys.
All right.
Thank you.
No, this is great. I think we need to go back and figure out why we didn't
why it wasn't
jump
already
on board,
done.
because that may be the answer right there.
Yeah, and I would love to talk to, you know, whomever has kind of.
Nick, would you mind just giving Zach a call when you get a chance, just ask him?
Oh, sure. Yeah, no problem at all.
Was he just like, you know?
Yeah, I'd love to know, you know, what has been tried here before.
Yeah. And again, it's no better time than the present.
Well, no. I'm saying we definitely do need to move forward. But I'm just curious if.
Sure, I'll
never
reach out and find out the details of that.
Okay.
How helpful do you think it would be if the Sierra Club had a position statement of sorts as it relates to an allowance of independence from a decentralized supplier of energy?
It may well be there already. I can check. Are you aware?
I'm not aware. Again, I'm on week number 2, so doing a lot of background research. It very well could be there. You know, I'll definitely look into that for you and see.
If we have the technology to power homes without any dependence on an FP&L, and a homeowner is willing to pursue that investment and the upkeep, I'd love to have the opportunity to do that, you know? And not for nothing, but organizations like Sierra Club could probably help achieve that. And now we're talking about, I got to also be honest with you, when I pass by solar arrays on the interstate, I actually get a bad feeling. You know, we're coating a tremendous amount of land with shade that was normally beaming with sunlight. And when you talk with microbiologists about the lagoon and how excited they get for organisms that are, you know, living within sediment, what are we doing there? So it definitely, it looks odd to me. And maybe it's just the newness of it or whatever, but I'd love to have the opportunity to be independent, you know?
Well, and just building on that, because I think there's a lot of factors, I think, is what's being pointed out. And I'm day one on this board, so I'm like even newer. But I think previous conversations about dark skies seem similar in the sense that, you know, a black and white decision was tough, but the nuances of a 20-year plan allow for a lot of navigating of all of these different factors. And I think if I'm hearing you all right and my fellow board members, that's kind of what we're talking about, is navigating through all of those factors. What is right this year? What's right in 10 years? How can you work with your electric?
Exactly. And obviously all of this technology that's going to be able to provide this is ever evolving. You know, new things are coming out all the time. But just a little bit to your point, I think one of the things that, just from a very new, fresh set of eyes on this whole campaign, is that our biggest problem is, and will always be, the availability of this sort of technology to those in communities of color and lower income communities. So when we're talking about removing our reliance on a big power company, that's not necessarily going to be accessible to a lot of these communities that are lower income. And so when we're looking at the cost of an energy efficient home versus one where, you know, people aren't able to make them energy efficient, that's kind of a big gap that we have to fill first. And we recognize that, because a lot of times the people who already have, maybe it's their water heater. For example, my water heater is run on solar, but that's because I was able to afford the technology to do that. And that's not the case for many people, especially in communities of color and lower income. So there are a lot of different sections to all of this, and bringing them all together into one sustainability plan, one clean energy plan for this city, is going to be important. So I welcome all of your feedback. All of you obviously have different backgrounds, but you're all together on this sustainability board. So I want that feedback, and I'm happy to give you my information after the meeting. Please send me emails, phone calls, whatever it is, and talk to me about the concerns you have, and I will bring them back, you know, to our headquarters in St. Pete, and we will work together with you to develop the proper plan for the city.
Okay. The part of it too, when you talk about education, is lifestyle. About 10 years ago, I started reading my electric meter every week. And there was about a month my wife was gone. So I had already installed a timer on the electric heater, the water heater. Went on for about an hour in the morning, an hour in the evening when you were doing stuff. I just turned it off. When I wanted to take a shower, I turned it on. And the bills went from over $100 to an average of less than $60. Pure lifestyle. I didn't sit there freezing in the cold or anything like that. You run the air conditioner at 79 instead of 72 or something. There's just a whole bunch of things. And these are the things, I guess, I would think a national organization would have an or should have an awful lot of resources to help people do that. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are many different small steps, some of which you mentioned are a great way to make homes more energy efficient, because not only does it, of course, lower the cost of those electric bills for the people, but it also is you're consuming less energy. And one of the things that's kind of backwards, and again, I'm in this very large learning phase, but one thing I learned today, in fact, is that the more electricity you're using, the cheaper it actually is. So a lot of people think, especially in lower income communities, a lot of times they'll go maybe a month longer before they turn on their air conditioner than most of us would, but that's actually going to end up costing them more in the long run because they're not using as much energy. And that's how these big power companies definitely kind of get you, is that, you know, you're using less energy, so you think your bill is going to be lower, but that's not the case most of the time. So the more you're using, now for someone like you who's taking those steps, you're still going to be using a lot of energy in other places, even though maybe you're setting your thermostat to a higher rate. But people in low-income communities are just going without. They're shutting off the TV and maybe watching it for an hour at night, thinking, well, if we only have an hour of TV time, we're using less electricity, versus if they watched it for 5 hours and ran their air conditioner, their rate would actually be lower, and they probably pay less at the end of the month. So fun fact there for you.
Here's a random question. How many engineers are you staffing in the Sierra Club? Do you have scientists?
Yeah, so I'm an organizing representative, and I have, right now, it's Volusia and Brevard are my top focuses. My region will eventually expand into Jacksonville and St. Augustine. We have an organizer in Tampa who works on the Beyond Coal campaign, which is not the same as this, of course. And then we have a Ready for 100 staffer in South Florida, and she actually was just able to get a big win in South Miami with their commitment to 100% clean energy.
Okay. So there's no engineers or scientists that work with them?
Oh, sorry, I misunderstood your question. I'm sorry. Yeah, so I'm not sure how many we have on staff in Florida. Obviously, on the broad scale in the entire country, there are some. I don't have the exact number, but those are the people we talk to help draft these resolutions. So I would go to them and say, these are the things in Satellite Beach that they're concerned about. These are the places that we all collectively think, and a lot of this for me is going to be coalition building. So working with all of you, but also working with groups like maybe the NAACP or, you know, maybe a political party, indivisible groups, all of these different groups who have a staked interest in what we're doing. So building that coalition and getting the feedback from all of you, and then bringing it to our engineers and scientists and people that are more equipped to draft these resolutions.
And just in case you're not familiar with Sierra Club, we're the oldest environmental organization in the country. And we have, in Brevard and River County, we have over 2,000 members, and I believe like 3 million worldwide, something like that. So if you're not familiar at all, do you want to just Google Sierra Club to see what we have? So we have our home base is in San Francisco, and so we have national, state, local levels. Okay. So it's quite extensive.
Awesome.
It not only has a nonprofit arm, but it has a political arm as well.
Right.
Yes, sir, a C4 and a C3.
Okay.
I'd just like to say, I really appreciate both of you coming to talk to us.
Absolutely.
I think that it's, you know, this isn't an easy discussion to have. Sure. And I'm sure that you probably, and your counterparts will probably meet a lot more opposition than you would from our group in our city. And I think I'm going to hope that I'm speaking on behalf of the entire board when I say this, that this is absolutely like an idea that we get behind, and it's, you know, whether you can take it to the next level and get a lot of things behind it, or if you're just spreading awareness, because for things like this, just having discussions, whatever it is to impact whatever anyone can do in their life to make a difference, that's great. Because we need things done on larger scales, but we also need people to know what they can do in their home. Sure. And so I think that it would be an easy thing for the city to get behind, but I also agree with John that we would probably want to make sure that it would be more than just a symbolic
Sure.
gesture.
Right, yeah,
Um,
and that is, that's obviously our end goal here is to
Yeah.
draft these resolutions, but have them be more than just that. One of the big campaigns that started a couple of years ago when this Ready for 100 campaign started is that we just started getting pledges from mayors of different cities and towns saying, yeah, I'm interested, like, I'm pledging to work toward 100% clean and renewable energy. Where in my county, we have 17 cities, and of them, 15 mayors have signed these pledges already. So that's kind of laying the groundwork for what we want to do, but we know it's so easy to just sign something, yeah, sure, I'll do that. But we want to be with you every step of the way to establish these things, because they're not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to be easy. The organizer on the ground in South Florida has been on staff for, I think, 2 years, and she just got her first commitment. So we know it's a lot of work, but we're here for the long haul, and you'll be seeing my face a lot. So get used to seeing me, because I'm definitely going to be, wanting to work with all of you and hear your thoughts and ideas so I can bring them back to our national level and say, this is what's happening in Satellite Beach, because you will get the same attention that Orlando got, that Chicago got, all of these big areas that we think of. These small cities are the first step to kind of spreading like wildfire these commitments.
Yeah, I think about what John said earlier about having like a roadmap. We want to be 100% by 2050. Okay, so what are the specific things we can do? We need to start taking actions, and this is a plan. We need to come up with a plan to start attacking it,
Do you have something?
Yeah, so just to kind of follow up with that, in the resolution itself, all those things are outlined. I don't know if anyone got to read the resolution language, but the different points that you all made have been addressed in one way, shape, or form in that resolution itself as to how that would go. And also, again, our Sustainability Action Plan does a pretty good job of making that roadmap very clear for our sustainability goals and the solar in particular, as well as LED to reduce those energy costs. But just to hit a few of those for everybody listening at home as well, to create mechanisms to include low-income citizens in the benefits of renewable energy. Also, defining renewable energy is in there as well. And additionally, the whereas to develop a plan to achieve 100% renewable energy by 2030 and community-wide by 100% by 2050. A lot of those things, as far as the plan goes, the resolution does a pretty good job of getting that plan started. And that's a resolution that is very similar to all the other resolutions Sierra Club has gone out to work with other communities to create. So, and again, it does fall right in line with our Green Achievement Target number 1 to have City Hall and Public Works building run completely off solar by 2022. So again, from a strictly staff perspective, it does fall very well in line with those already pre-existing goals. And if you haven't gotten a chance to read the resolution, hopefully that would help to clarify some of those roadmap details.
And I would encourage all of you to look up the Ready for 100 campaign through the Sierra Club, and you can actually read all of the case studies in cities and states even where this has been, accomplished. Now, all of them have made commitments for many years out, but you can look at what they've done and maybe find somewhere where you see a lot of, and everyone is different, no two are the same. So you can read through them and say, well, I like, a piece from this in Orlando and a piece from this in Chicago, and I think these two things together would be perfect for ours. So,
your name again?
Brooke Alexander.
Okay, Brooke, thanks. All right, any further
Thank you, guys.
public comment?
Thank you.
Yep, we good?
Thanks.
All right, thank you, Leslie, thank you, Brooke. All right, next plan of action here, we got discuss, take action on presentations on seagrass, I guess from last month. Okay.
I wanted to start, if that's cool. See? Sure.
So I think that both last meeting and this meeting were quite significant as it relates to what we can do as a board. I think that our discussion should revolve around the idea of allowing this board to take a position and make a recommendation to our city council. I think that low-hanging fruit, something that would be fairly easy to achieve, and I'll go ahead and propose it now, is that this board discusses the idea of having the city council make a position, not form a resolution or anything of that nature necessarily, but take a position that the thermal pollution coming out of the power plant up north is a problem to our lagoon, our area, and that the position of this city is that it should be shut down.
I think that that's a reasonable thing to bring up. So day one, but I have been attending all the presentations. I thought it was very striking, the complex connectivity of all of these things, as we heard today. But what I took out of from last month was the power plant. Also the fertilizer. I think both speakers last time, when pushed for what's your top thing, said basically banning all fertilizer. And I know we've had a summer ban for a long time, but I thought that stuck with me in terms of, so what do you do with that?
We actually just banned glyphosate as well, so we did just kind of make some moves on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how Beach just banned glyphosate. Yeah, I think we're the 6th city in the state to do it. Yeah, so.
I think what I find interesting is that the gentleman who came, Bob, he didn't come right out and say, let's shut off the heat and that'll get rid of our manatee problem. You know, I didn't really get that.
Yeah, he was actually kind of saying that they're all going to migrate away before the problem hits that point of no return, and I don't really feel like they're all going to migrate away. I think we'll just keep sustaining an amount that will keep eating the seagrass away.
Well, as the seagrass comes back, I didn't want to get into, I mean, logically, as the seagrass comes back, then that would pull them back.
But that's what I'm saying. So there's always going to be enough that a population will be there and they'll continue to consume. So as much as some may go away or some may die, enough will still remain to be eating. So the main problem would be, yes, the heat is maintaining an artificial population.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is where it's kind of a, I mean, in the long and medium term, I agree. It's not natural. We shouldn't be pumping heat into the lagoon. But the thing that stuck in my head is, and I understand that it's not, you know, when he was talking about the other regulators being concerned about this, is that I had the vision of like a bunch of floating manatees. The first, when it happened. I mean, that's basically what he said in his many words.
What if we took a position that said that we would like it to be looked into if we could even tone it down to see what the impacts?
That just means some kind of plan, whether it's a gradual reduction in temperatures. Or
even just looking into it more.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Looking into it and then turning it down, seeing what the impacts of turning it down are, and then maybe turning it off.
But if we could turn back the clock and have it never have happened, that to me is a no-brainer. But I do feel like there's the possibility for there being, based on what he said, there being large-scale manatee death if we did it right now, because humans have created this unnatural situation.
But then again, there's no proof of that either.
But also, we're having an impact right now based on his numbers. If we do too many things, you know, maybe we won't get an accurate assessment of what actually caused them to go down in the first place. I mean, if we look back at the data next year and it's in the same area, then we'll know that they have definitely vacated because the grass is low.
So
but if we turn off the hot water as well, we're going to have an off number.
So let's go around real quick and just give your personal opinion as to what benefit or what positive effect artificially warming a body of water has.
Can I just say, I would be far less concerned with the city taking an official position on this, based on one person's presentation. I think there might be a there. It seems obvious that there is, but maybe there's not. Or maybe there's unintended consequences that we just don't understand, because that was, yes, there were numbers there, but numbers can be skewed and presentations can be misrepresented. And I would be 100% in favor of looking into this and measuring what possible impacts could happen if we reduce it, things like that.
I think just starting a conversation of looking into it deeper, saying there is something here that people are looking over and we need to spend a bit more time thinking, and maybe there's something here.
That's where I'm at. Here's the analogy that I see. It's like there's people. I'm not one of them, but it's a totally defensible position. You don't believe in zoos at all. Like, we should not have domesticated animals. Okay, but there's animals now that are born into captivity who cannot take care of themselves in the wild. So even if you don't believe there should have ever been zoos, what are you going to do with those animals? And I'm not saying it's a direct correlation, but what I took from his statement about the concern at a regulatory level is that now we have generations of these manatees who know to come to this place because it's a hot water source. So the year that they come and it's turned off, it could be a bad. And I don't know enough that would be a very bad outcome. Right. And it's humans' fault, and we're trying to correct ourselves, but there could be significant short-term negativity.
There could be, but he said he didn't even know himself, and because there could be a shorter window, 4 or 5 years of the pattern, so that may not even impact as great as we think or could think. So again, there's just so many what ifs, and we're just saying we don't want like 600 manatees to float up, so we're not going to talk about it or look into it. No, I think that we should, just because I think there may be something there.
Well, keep in mind that Chuck Jacoby made a mention last month that there are signs that our lagoon is being stressed. The grasses are being stressed to a level that might not be sustainable. And he has to walk a very fine line. He has a lot of parties that he's accountable to. And the environmental scientists with Michael Baker Group literally turned around and thanked him for finally saying something of this nature, because she's for years seen what's going on. And I've known about the data that's been out there for a while, and I've just scratched my head just wondering. And when I heard Chuck confirm, and then Maribin confirm, and then I reached out to Dwayne DeFries, who's with the National Estuary Program, and he has indicated that there are autopsies going on revealing that manatees are dying, and one of the things that they think they're dying from is because the nutrients that they're consuming aren't capable of sustaining them. They're literally starting to harvest algae and things of that nature, which is causing them to die. So this could be a benefit to the manatee by way of shutting the water down.
So a couple things really quickly. There have been a couple of videos of manatees already eating St. Augustine grass, or trying to eat St. Augustine grass. Yeah. Also, when I was out at that airport seagrass, operation, all those cages are there because the manatees will deroot all that grass easily, and that just, you can't bring that back once it deroots it. So manatees do have a massive impact on, they don't just graze it, they literally can just rip it out, and then you're looking at years and years before you can potentially even bring it back. So
I think we could say, though, that this is, sorry.
No, go on.
That this is complicated, and there's problems, and then there's solutions, causes, solutions, and I'm with you guys in terms of thinking about how all of this moves forward. I'd be comfortable with saying something like, can we really definitively show some of the root problems? So we have the root problems. That doesn't necessarily mean we have the root answer. So all of the things that will come out of, if you pull one thread here, if you don't, it could help, but we just don't know for sure. But I feel like that's a rigorous data progress moving forward, is to establish root causes, look at consequences of each of them, and move forward in that way. I mean, that's where I'm the most comfortable.
I'm good with the goal of turning it off, but I think there needs to be a study to the best degree you can of what the effects would be and the most humane way to do it.
Well, he used a phrase several times, carrying capacity. And that depends on how much grass is there. So it seems the first question is, what is the current carrying capacity? Whether it's 6 manatees or 6,000 manatees, there's a number somewhere in between those two. And it's going to be a rough estimate. And then the other carrying capacity would be, okay, if we restore things to what we're hoping to get to, whatever that might be, what's that carrying capacity? Once you know those numbers, then you figure what to do. If the carrying capacity is determined to be 5,000 manatees, there's only 3,000, there really doesn't seem to be a problem. I doubt if that's the case. It's probably a much lower number. And then the problem becomes, if you don't thin the manatees, then you're always going to have that loss to the seagrass. And so that makes it more harder to get the seagrass back. So we're demucking the lagoon to get rid of, to restore the seagrass. We're reducing nutrients into the lagoon to restore seagrass. And if it turns out there's a sink for seagrass, which is manatees, then that should be dealt with too. But until you've got some numbers to work with, you really don't know which direction you're going. You can suspect, but you don't know until you've got something. So I would think the first thing to do is for somebody to find out if anybody has a number other than his numbers.
Yeah, or validate his numbers.
Is your name Staff?
John, I'll be happy to look into that for you and to use those numbers and the numbers before that Chuck presented to look at the total current acreage versus his numbers of consumption acreage to come up with some kind of a number for you.
Well, the thing is, I can't imagine that nobody other than one individual has looked into what is some swag of a carrying capacity.
I'll also say there are numerous other species that also do consume seagrass.
And that should be considered too.
There's a white paper out, and I don't remember the woman's name who authored the paper, but she did a carrying capacity of sorts. Back in I want to say it was 2012 maybe, and I have a copy of that paper and I haven't gone through it with a fine-tooth comb, but I can share it with you, and it has a certain scientific bent to it that is fairly complicated to follow. In other words, to be able to discern and come up with a clear message based on her paper might be a little tricky.
What is her academia?
What is it?
Yeah,
I don't recall. But yeah, it's a white paper. It's a scientific paper of sorts.
That could be interesting.
Yeah.
And, you know, if we can find more, I would think the St. John's would have looked at this at some point.
Yeah, and again, St. John's has got a bit of a fine, and not for nothing, but the manatee has been used so often to play on emotions, you know, and you know, I think in the entire time we analyze this more and more and more, the seagrasses are going to continue to be pressured. To me, flicking a switch and ending the thermal pollution makes sense, but that might be too hardcore. So
now the question is, when they talk about, are they heating the water all the time or just once its temperature goes below a certain point?
Yeah, so
if they're heating it all the time, the simplest thing to do would be say, reduce it during the warmer months at least.
Let's invite FPL to come talk to us about that plant.
Yeah, I can't imagine
what was mandated.
That manatees aren't kind of like, some of the birds can actually see into the ultraviolet stuff that we can't see, and bees do that. So they can track things we don't even see. And the manatees may be following a thermal trail, and if you have that trail get dimmer and dimmer and dimmer, eventually they may decide that there's a better thermal trail and it leads south.
Manatees do sense temperature with their whiskers.
There you
Trivia.
go. Okay.
So can we agree that we could write a statement that we are monitoring the pollution of the population of manatees, and maybe this is how we're doing it. We're looking at the effects of water, heat, and basically telling our position would be showing how we're observing it, how we're coming to our conclusion. I mean, I don't.
That doesn't do
I
it.
think we're just interested because there's a lot of very interesting points that come out of this presentation, our last presentation, a lot of talks we've had. I think we should just say that we're very intrigued by these ideas that aren't being discussed, and we would like more discussion and
more
information on these
Yeah,
topics.
we're entering hour 3 here, but we haven't, there's the whole, concept of, which I think is very intriguing, is potentially trying to get seagrass growing on the, west side of Sampson's, and how viable that is, and, that as a project. So I think we need to continue addressing this issue as a board. I feel like the lagoon is a significant issue, and all of these interrelating factors are, and I feel like we're starting to get a better, I feel like I have a better idea of what's going on than I did two meetings ago, but I feel like we should keep this on the agenda, both, and this is the power plant issue is one, but that project that we could potentially do here in Satellite Beach is another.
Yeah.
Well, and I wonder, this seems like a big getting back to the mission of this board kind of discussion too. And I wonder if there is, I don't know how, but, time in meetings or a work session or something that gets back to the GATS and gets back to education and gets back to the mission and thinks about all these converging factors, the lagoon, the seagrass, the power plant, the manatees, the fertilizer. It's also interconnected. We're bringing up a lot of issues that are difficult to wade through in a short amount of time with a packed agenda, and every agenda is going to be packed. And so it feels like this is a bigger, almost strategic conversation if there's space and time for that.
Personally, I would prefer, there's a white paper that would mention, if Nick found that somebody else had done some study, I prefer to get my stuff over the internet and read it at home at my leisure instead of sitting here in a meeting and taking up half an hour. I'd rather have a whole lot of background than have somebody, an expert, come in and be informed enough to be able to ask some very pointed questions and say, okay, what about? And if they don't have an answer, they need to go and get an answer, or if they've got the right answer, then we say, fine, here's the route to take.
So I like the idea, though, of the board just kind of saying that we're interested in this concept and that we want more information. Kind of even for, like, for example, the position that Dwayne holds. Before him, that gentleman was essentially, let go because he was trying to move towards getting rid of fertilizer. Kind of like on his own mission in a sense. Something like this gives people like Dwayne and others kind of like, I wouldn't say like a scapegoat, but I'm just saying like essentially it's not them putting the pressure and them asking questions. It essentially gives them a little bit of leverage to search for information that we may not personally be able to go get, but people like Dwayne sit in front of entities across the state and counties and nonprofits, and so, I mean, for us to just say we're interested in somebody that is in a position to get more information for us is very valuable.
Especially somebody who understands more intricately all of these things that we don't, because everyone that stood before us has said, like, this is one contributing factor. And I think we could have monthly meetings for 2 years and still not know what people like Dwayne know.
Or of access.
Come on, Dwayne's a political guy. I mean,
but still,
bottom line, he's a political guy. And I agree with what you're saying as it relates to arming him, if you will.
Correct.
Well, do you have a suggested motion, even though you aren't allowed to vote?
Well, no, I'm just saying that essentially what we do is we go ahead and take a position that we would like more information. We think this is something that should be discussed because it isn't being discussed, but there's something there, and we would like more, community engagement, more information, we would like this to be opened up.
Would this be the type of thing we could have like a special meeting, like a workshop meeting about?
I feel in the future maybe, but right now I think that one of the biggest things is I think we are personally taking on a lot that could be done by others if we gave them that momentum, saying, hey, here's a piece of paper saying we would like more information. That gives them that ability to go and pull that information that they may have easier access.
Do you feel you've been adequately tasked?
Yes, sir. Also, I wanted to comment back to Mark's question about the project and the status. Tentatively, we have been approved for partial funding for the seagrass habitat mosaic restoration on the west side of Sampson's from the NEP.
But my concern now is those manatees, man.
So with that project, the manatees were taken into concern, the cages were an option, but because of the orientation of it and the layout of the oysters, a combination of the 100-foot oyster bags along with some either metal or different types of material can be placed temporarily in between the 100-foot sections and the 5-foot gaps to reduce manatees from being able to enter. So the seagrasses wouldn't need to be caged, they would just be kind of quarantined and blocked off.
Well, it might do something to flow, though, and as it relates to the needs of the grass.
If the blockage, whatever, I don't know what to call it, but if the areas between the bags, the 5-foot openings that would allow for flow, had a pore space.
You want steel slats?
It's more of a fence, actually. It would be more of a, so imagine, the pore space between like a screen, a small mesh screen would allow for water flow, but no fish over a certain size, like a pinfish that would eat seagrass or manatees, or things like that. And again, it still has to be approved by the board of the NEP. And I'll probably have to go talk to them about it, and they'll come back with some really great ideas, but just a little update on that for you.
We should definitely analyze mass, as he was talking about too, not just square footage, but the thickness of it too. Make sure to get it nice.
Well, hopefully once it gets approved, tentatively, everybody can kayak out there and help with the monitoring.
When are you going out there next?
To the site? Yeah. Well, it depends on if we, get that full approval for all funding.
You don't go over there and
just pray over it. If you want to go out there and kayak with me, Chris, I'd be happy to.
I got my stand-up paddle board.
Yeah, man, I'd be happy to go out there and we could take a look at it. Anyone else that wants to take a field trip? Great.
I have a stand-up too.
I got a kayak.
Yeah.
All right,
We'll field trip.
We'll start a text.
What depth were you going to plant at?
So that particular location is 2.5 on average, with the max depths of 3.5 to 4 and a min depth of 2.
Yeah. Manatees could make it in there, so.
Right, so if we were
They'd be dragging bottom, but they could.
They could make it in, but they can't get over the 3 feet of oyster bag and shell.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll try to knock it over, but we'll see.
So do we need to make a position on this?
Well, Nick said he felt tasked, so I figure that's adequate.
Yeah.
All right.
I think we should continue discussing it at future meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely agree.
Okay. All right, open for any public comment? Are you coming up?
Sure. I'll make it quick because I've been talking for a while. Sheila Young, 315 Hamlin. I'm really pleased to listen to all of the discussion that's been going on. I'm getting my PhD in science education focusing on critical thinking in science. So it's great to see the questions and have all this discussion. So it makes me feel proud of this board. I think you do need to continue discussing this issue and get more information, though, especially about the seagrasses, power plants. Power plants are always going to emit heat because they have to do that to cool down the equipment inside the plant. So understand how much happens naturally as a process of the effluent they normally have. Understand where it is. The lagoon, the estuary, it borders 5 counties. Seagrass issues are different all along the whole span of the estuary. So there are so many issues that are involved
and the benthic community that's there as well. You have to understand so much. It's not just the manatees, it's not just the seagrass, there's a lot involved in it. And I recommend, if you haven't spoken with Lisa Soto from MRC, bring her in and have her give the presentation on what's happening with the health of the lagoon. And it'll help bring some perspective to all of this that you're hearing. It's not just about manatees and heat and seagrass. There's a lot more involved.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my recommendation, and congratulations to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheila.
All right, next topic of business, discuss, take action on appointing a member to join the Ad Hoc Design Committee. This sounds really interesting. John?
On.
John's already on.
I'm already.
Oh, is he on there?
Yes.
Oh, it was discussing adding another
Adding
one?
another
I thought we
person.
were discussing
One
adding
representing
John.
the board.
Oh, did I
The board.
misunderstand that?
Is there someone other than John who's interested? Is that a good?
Does everybody know what we're talking about?
Yeah, redesigning
The design of the
fire station.
I read it, but it would be
public
great
works.
to have a brief,
So, question, John. So, how far are you guys going into designing? Because, I mean, isn't there someone else designing it? So are you doing more advisory on the design and input, or
It'll
what is
be
it exactly?
advisory. I don't know the details either, but it's more, and I forget, in the memo they had for council, down towards the bottom, there was a list like ingress and egress, exterior, I presume it would be things like, do we want a one-story building, a three-story building, a
Often
two-story
with this
building?
meeting
You know,
happening.
this kind of, how do you fit? And I actually sent Courtney
meetings
a
like every
long list
month,
of
or-
information that I was interested in, so I can make some informed
Meeting
decisions.
schedule will be determined at the first meeting.
Yeah. But
But
it-
they said a max of about 6 meetings. Max.
And my guess is they would be separated by a fair amount, because there'll be professionals actually doing the plans. And so I could see, kind of a sounding board, you might call it, I don't.
John, on the climate ambassadors, there was another guy that had also a lead designation like me. Who was that? Is he on this? Do you have anyone that understands lead?
Not sure.
I mean, to be honest, I really can't commit to one more thing. I've already so many things going on, but I would like to at least put a little bit of input with lead design, if anything. But I still don't really want to commit unless literally nobody else really well.
Well, John, are you clear? Because I brought up the email, I can read it if.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm clear,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I know, yeah, and I read it, but it was more about like, well, what specifically are you going to be commenting about? I mean, I'd be happy to participate also. I don't have a strong feeling either way, but I think it sounds interesting and worthy work.
I'm
So-
very interested in it,
Oh,
actually.
well, Chris,
So-
yeah.
Are you volunteering?
Yeah.
I don't know if I can.
I'd make a
You can
motion-
volunteer, somebody will move.
I'd make a motion that we appoint Chris as our designee if he's interested.
I'll second.
Yeah.
Perfect. Matt White?
Yay.
Jennifer Schroeder?
Yay.
Steve Dillon?
Yay.
John Bergen?
Yes.
Mark Boyd?
Yes.
Chris Reed?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thanks.
And I don't see any reason why anybody,
I'll
there'll be
still-
open
I'll
meetings.
still-
All right, any public comment? All right, next. Board member comments. Any comments?
Yes.
You want to start off?
Okay, recently on social media, there was a discussion going on about driving golf carts that have been licensed in the city for use on city streets into harbor. Specifically, Lowe's was mentioned, but I can imagine other places there, the new Ace, who knows, taking kids to the elementary school. And I checked with Chief Pearson, and if you take one of our licensed carts, if it isn't street licensed by the state, into harbor, they have all the right in the world to charge you with a criminal offense. And so that is a problem. But thinking about it, that doesn't seem like a bad idea. So it seemed to me, whether this board thought it would be, again, something to consider, Satellite Beach approaching Harbor about, what about you guys allow our carts in your city, and if you want to license carts, your carts can come into our city and go to Atlantic Plaza. Why limit them to one city? I mean, it's just a line that nobody knows where it is
And
anyway.
it's not a straight line either.
Yeah, and so.
Just merge. And they're very small, yeah, they're a little the same city. But.
Try that and see what happens.
I was kidding. That was the second joke of the night. Both political in nature.
I guess I was interested in, you know, what the board's thought was. If the board thought that it'd be a good idea to approach it again, that'd be turn it over to staff and let them discuss, or I'll take it to Courtney.
I can't see any harm in it. I think it's a good idea. And
Reciprocity, I think, would be the singular word. Yeah.
I think we should reach out, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like it. I would
Why
like
don't
to-
I talk to, I'll email Courtney.
Well, because, and I'll say too, I mean, really, the only, you know, the south end of Indian Harbor Beach is, okay, like Causeway, right? There's nothing, everything south there is Melbourne or unincorporated county or whatever, so
And
your
nobody's gonna
your
drive over
major,
there.
you're not going over, the most major street you've really gone over would be, what, Pine Tree? You know,
Pine Tree
Yeah,
would be-
that's the most significant street anyone will be crossing in a golf
Because
cart. So be
credit-
safe,
yeah.
you know?
You've got the Space Coast Credit Unions down there, you've got the elementary school. There's a bunch of stuff I think that people would like to visit.
They've got more bike lanes too, so more space for those golf carts.
Okay. I'll send Courtney an email.
Cool.
I would just like to say, welcome, Jen.
Thanks. It is great to be here. Thank you to you all. This is awesome. Yeah. And thanks for the introduction, Chris. It's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know, it's kind of a nice, healthy board when you're sort of like, you know, integrating and transitioning and, yeah.
Well, I got with your husband about that intro, so.
Oh.
It was quite a bit longer, but I was like, man, come
Oh,
on.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I know, right? Feel free to truncate. Yeah. Thank you.
Just kidding.
No, I know.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Truncate.
And he still showed his face.
All right. Any more comments from the board? I'd just like to say the last bike ride was pretty good. I think we have a great audience there. We've got a lot of little kids coming, which is great. They're all about it, but they're great to talk to. You know, if they knew where we were coming from and what we're doing here, I think that's only positive as they grow up.
Yeah.
So, and I'm excited about the next one. And, yeah.
Thanks to you, Chris, because I've missed very few, and you've been the leader and the coordinator, and all that takes work, you know, and it's stressful to like make sure that no one gets hit.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so.
Yeah, and the bike police came through again, and man, I'll tell you.
That's four, three of them?
4, I think. Oh, 3.
Or three, one was the wife.
Well, the new guy was there. And, yeah, they did a great job. We had a couple of people hanging back, and one of them stayed back there. But the issue that they had was they were so far back that the walkie-talkies stopped working. So the bike police did get a little stressed about that. That's
They
why I
don't
think,
have cell phones?
I know, but that's why I think we need to make this bike collective a real thing, because then we can get these young kids on faster bikes. They're big enough. They're definitely big enough. We can stay safer in a closer group. So.
Bless you.
Is that about it? We need to get some things to talk about. All right. Let's see. Any public comment? No. Thank you. The next agenda item is agendas for next week. Agenda items for next week. For next month. Next month.
I have one, actually. I emailed Julie about this, and we thought about adding it last minute for this meeting, which turned out to be wise. I know we already had a pretty full agenda, but 321 Millennials is a group which I'm a board member of as well, and a member. we have voted to do our second annual project. The first one, I'll try to be brief about this, but the first one, we installed the permanent cornhole boards that are in the EGAD Park now, in partnership with the City of Melbourne. One of 321 Millennials' longtime partners has been KBB. Happen to be on the KBB board as well, but it's a young professional organization, but it's community first, I would say, in describing it. So, and environmental has been a big piece of that. So anyways, second annual project has been voted on by the membership. It's to build a community art installation that is also a recycling container. If you Google Goby fish, you'll see that there's
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, it's on the beach.
Yeah, on the beach. So basically, particularly for children,
Actually, I sent that to you.
To make
that
the
big fish on them.
Yeah, to make the connection between recycling, particularly in coastal communities, the working concept is maybe a sea turtle, since we are that's distinctly Brevard. So anyways, that's so, and it's there's a budget for it. There's a committee. It's essentially a gift. What we need, last ended up being City of Melbourne and EGAD, but is a partner from a municipal standpoint where we're going to put it. Satellite Beach is the first one that came to mind. Obviously, a lot of good beach locations here, and so Shane Bergman, who's the head honcho, I don't know, chairman, and Akela, who's very much the co-equal branch, I would say, functionally, but the number two. One or both of them want to come present next time about the project and potentially making a recommendation to do it here in Satellite Beach. And very early stages, we've reached out to Waste Management. Obviously, they need to be on board, and KBB potentially, just in terms of their expertise with recycling and that kind of stuff. But that's that. Sorry if I flattered on about it. But
what's the timeline on that? Do you know?
It's an annual project, so we want to get it done in 2019. But really the biggest once we know where we're going to put it, then things came together on, I'd say, about a similar time frame last year. And there's people in the organization. The good thing is there's people who work in construction, engineering, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I know a few of them.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, it's an annual project. We had the dedication was scheduled for December, and Mayor Kathy Mahan was going to give out the ceremonial first toss of the cornhole bag, but unfortunately we got rained out. But we got it done on schedule, is the punchline there, last year. So
why not put it first so that any visitors can leave without having to listen to a lot of other stuff?
Yeah. Let's do it. What's that?
Okay. Any others?
I don't know if this is something I just do offline, but I'm interested in that GAT number 19 and the synthetic fertilizer and what happened. And I wondered if others are interested, if Hannah might want to just, introduce herself and talk about that next month, or if it's something that's more individual offline, that's fine too.
You can have her report on her progress.
Yeah,
and
that'd be
see
great.
where she's at and get the board's direction and how she moves forward.
Yeah.
So there's been development on 19?
So I've met with her and discussed where we left off, and she's taken that. And so far what we've done is we are generating a one-pager to present to the board. So thank you for reading my mind. Very, very nicely done. It'll include a high-cost estimate, a low-cost estimate, and different methods of implementation and tracking of the fertilizers as they move through the ground and above the surface, both in stormwater runoff and in groundwater penetration. Mark, by the way, I'd be happy to work with you on that. I have an idea
Okay.
as well.
Cool. I'd like to, maybe for an agenda item, a little 5 minutes of your time. I've got an idea in my head about getting kids more involved, maybe giving presentations more often. It's nice when the kids come and do their little presentations. We have little 5-minute, 10-minute presentations from our local sustainability board members around town. I mean, there's a lot of things we could be learning. I just saw a program the other day about countries over in Africa that are banning plastic bags and how aggressive they're being about it. And those are lessons that we could learn. Maybe some kids could present things like that or other interesting topics, but it'd be nice to get some engagement. So I just put together something, an idea per se, when it might start, maybe in the fall, where we could invite kids to present more on a regular basis.
If you'd like, we can have a scout that just did a project, The Beach, Pearson Malden, and it's going to be on the news on Saturday. The Beach Take a Toy, Leave a Toy box that he did for a scout project.
Yeah.
He can come in and maybe we can get more kids in to start that kind of thing.
I wonder if we could talk with our elementary schools and see if maybe the teachers could have kids write like an essay or a report on something sustainable, and then maybe, they get nominated by teachers or something. There's like a reward system for them to come present to us, and maybe we give them our like water bottle or, something like that.
Yeah.
And that way, even the kids that aren't presenting are still learning and, inspired to go do things, plus a little bit of civic engagement kind of there.
Well, I can reach back out to all the teachers that I presented it on stormwater, and the surf rider clubs, and start there.
So could we book the Boy Scout for 2 months out and then just discuss this?
Sure, yeah.
Discuss how we maybe create an award system to hand a kid, a little plaque or...
Because we could do like a Surfside Kid for, October, another one in November, from like Surfside, Holland, because like each school could present twice in the school year.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And that would be like every month that we would have it.
So they're also developing the Satellite Sustainability Board, and I can talk to them about that there.
And Delora.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Delora, we couldn't generate as many new recruits as we would like to have this past year. So there's been talk about possibly combining the boards, but we'll see.
Cool. So I'll just get something together.
Great idea.
Great
idea. Absolutely.
Got some other ideas too, but I'll leave that for next one. We got a lot on our plate.
Implement one at a time.
All right, so any public comment? No? All right. Lastly, let's see, adoption of minutes from April 24th, 2019.
So move.
Second. Yeah.
All right, yeah.
Don and Matt. I second it. Yeah.
Jennifer Schreiber?
Abstain, I believe. I abstain, is that right?
No.
Oh, first meeting,
They were in the packet, so if you read them, you're just approving it.
Okay, approve.
And you were there.
Steve Dillon?
Yes.
Mark Boyd?
Yes.
Don Fergus?
Yes.
Matt White?
Yes.
Rick Reed?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, and that'll be it for today. Thank you very much.
Nice job.